Stephen, as you well know, when you really look at the college football playoff and it just being a 4-team playoff through this season for this 10-year era, it's the elite of college football. There are very few schools that make a regular trip, and of course, no one has made as many trips as Alabama. So this is something special when we see even a program the status of Texas making its first trip to the college football playoff. But this is almost business as usual to a certain extent. Do you get a vibe from the team in particular about this being business as usual or a special experience?
A little bit of both. It is sort of business as usual from Nick Saban's perspective, but it's also a really cool experience because a lot of players on this team, they've never been out west before. They've never been on the West Coast before. So this is different for a lot of those young men. I mean, you mentioned it, Mark, the last time Alabama was in Pasadena, California for the Rose Bowl. It was the 2009 season, the 2010 game. And one of the coaches on the staff that remembers that game is Josh Chapman, who's on the strength staff. He was on that 2009 national championship team. So he talks to the players a lot about that game and what that game meant in terms of the program. So he's one of the few remnants of that team, along with Jeff Allen, who's the head athletic trainer, the head team doctor. You know, he was on that 09 staff that went to the national championship in Pasadena. So Alabama has a few pieces from that team on this current coaching staff, kind of giving the guys the history, giving the guys the motivation and the inspiration behind that. The last time Bama played in the Rose Bowl, of course, was the 2020 COVID season. But, of course, that game was played in Arlington, Texas at AT&T Stadium because California was shut down and on lockdown because of the COVID pandemic. So this is the first time in over a decade Alabama goes back to the Great Roses of Pasadena to play in this matchup right here. But it's business as usual for Coach Saban because he's trying to get that 8th national championship of his coaching tenure, the 7th at the University of Alabama. For a lot of these players who have never been out west before, this is a very huge opportunity for them to kind of enjoy this moment.
Stephen, I keep hearing about the close calls that Bama has experienced, the South Florida game, the Arkansas game in particular. Then, of course, most notably, the 4th and 31 miracle to pull off the game on the Plains against Auburn. I think people lose sight of, in addition to the dominance of Alabama football over the past 15 years, there have been close calls. There are going to be close calls. No team marches through a season winning every game by 25 points. There are going to be close calls. And if you look at Alabama's championship seasons from the past, they have had close calls that they have needed to pull out and not necessarily play their best. And the most recent example was the team that made it all the way to the 21 championship game and the games that they pulled off that weren't the prettiest against Auburn and LSU in particular. So do you see some of those close calls as a warning sign, major concerns, or this team has proven and shown that it can win and knows how to win?
I think it's more so this team has proven to show how it can win in different ways that it can win and win different variety of games. You go back to the 09 season, it was a close call against South Carolina. It was a close call against Ole Miss. It was a close call against Auburn. It took 2 Terrence Cody blocked field goals to beat Tennessee. I mean, 09 was a close call. It took a screen pass from Greg McElroy to Julio Jones to beat LSU that year. So 09 was close calls. 2011 was close calls. You lost 9-6 to LSU in 2011. So 2012 was close calls. You got beat by Johnny Manziel, Texas A&M, 29-24 in 2012. 2015 was close calls. You suffered a 43-37 loss to Ole Miss early in the 2015 season. 2017 was close calls. You took a loss, 26-14 to Auburn in the Iron Bowl that year, but still got to the college football playoff. 2020, yes, it was perfect. You ran through the season undefeated, but there were close games in that season as well. So Alabama, in its national championship history under Coach Saban, has had some close call games. So it's nothing strange or unusual about it. This season right here, you had an ugly game against South Florida that you found a way to win. You had a tough game against Tennessee that you found a way to win. You had a tough game against Arkansas that you found a way to win. You had a tough game against Auburn and a tough game against Georgia that you found a way to win those matchups in those moments. So it speaks to the ways that Alabama can win football games. And just getting back to the toughness of understanding, look, nobody's going to just bow down to you because you roll out of bed and you're Alabama football. You're going to get everybody's best game, everybody's best matchup, but it's how you fight and it's how you persevere through that. And this team has shown the grit of the toughness and the true perseverance of those championship teams of recent years in the Saban era that found ways to win hard and to win those close matchups.
Stephen, there's so much put on Jalen Milroe to generate offense, not just throwing the football downfield. And of course, he completes passes for more chunk yardage than just about any quarterback in the country. But of course, in the running game, do they have enough from a traditional running set, whether that's Jace McClellan or the other runners, to generate a running game outside of Jalen Milroe to take some pressure off of him?
I think they do, Mark. You look at Jace McClellan, who did battle with a bit of a foot issue. He tweaked his foot, and it's been the right foot that's been kind of aggravating him. He tweaked that against Auburn in the Iron Bowl. He could have played against Georgia in the SEC title game. He did dress out. He did go through pregame warm-ups, but just for precautionary reasons, a team held him out. Coach Saban talked about he had been doing a lot of this dry land running. He is looking better day by day versus where he was at prior. I look at when they start prep here in California for the Rose Bowl, how does Jace McClellan look? If he looks good to go, then Jace will play. But behind him, you have a Roydell Williams, who ran hard in the SEC championship against Georgia. And he does give you power between the tackles. He does provide shiftiness and speed on the outside. Can catch out the backfield as well. Jam Miller has given you a lot in the passing game, as well as the run game. He has improved also as a pass blocker. So there's Jam Miller. And then you do have two valuable freshmen. We look at Justice Haynes, who a lot of people thought we would see more from him, or we would have seen more from him earlier in the season. We saw bits of him, but not quite the amount that we thought we would get. This will be a time where he can be unleashed more in the postseason. And then you have Richard Young, another former five-star from the state of Florida. He could see some time here in this matchup against Michigan. So we could see Jace McClellan against the Wolverines, depending upon how he looks in practice once the team arrives there in California. But if you don't see Jace, you still have Roydell Williams. You still have Jim Miller. I mean, you still have Justice Haynes and Richard Young. All four guys talented. All four guys can do different things. So there is a run game that would complement Jalen Milroe.
Stephen M. Smith, Touchdown Alabama, In My Own Words, is the show you need to lock in on every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right here on YouTube, 6:30 Central Time. Stephen, I believe we have most likely the two best cornerback tandems in college football in this game, on the Michigan side, on the Alabama side. I'm going to talk about the Michigan two corners and the challenge they present to these Alabama receivers. Will Johnson, Mike Sanders still. Nobody is going to necessarily confuse this Alabama wide receiver core for a vintage Bama wide receiver core. But while Michigan doesn't rely heavily on downfield passing, they're going to go to the tight end a lot. They're a lot more run-oriented than Bama. Bama, of course, the deep passing game has been integral to this team. How do you see that matchup shaking out in regards to outside threats for Bama against these Michigan corners?
This Michigan secondary is they're really good. They are really good. They generate interceptions. They create turnovers. And you got to give that coaching staff under Jim Harbaugh a lot of credit for getting this secondary to play at a high level. The big thing for Alabama and the big thing for Tommy Rees as the offensive coordinator is take the easy money when it's there. If they're not going to give you the deep passing game, take the underneath routes. Take the 10 to 15-yard passes into the boundary. Take the passes in the flat and let your playmakers make moves out there in space. You go back to the SEC championship against Georgia and even the Iron Bowl against Auburn. You know, Auburn started off not allowing the deep passes to Jermaine Burton and Isaiah Bond until Bama started taking the underneath routes to Bond, the underneath routes to Kobe Prentice, the 10 to 15-yard passes. And then that opened up some of the deep play games where we saw Milroe hit Jermaine Burton for a 68-yard touchdown. And then Milroe hitting Isaiah Bond for the game-winning 31-yard score there on 4th and 31 at the end there. Then against Georgia for the SEC title, Georgia wasn't given the deep ball. And it was Tommy Reese going with underneath routes to Isaiah Bond, underneath routes to Kobe Prentice, underneath routes to Kendrick Law. And that's what opened up the deep passing game eventually. So for Alabama against Michigan, if the deep play is not there, you can't afford to get impatient. You got to take the underneath routes, the plays in the flat, the wheel routes to the running back. You got to take the easy money early and then work in later on the game those deep integral routes there. So for Alabama, it's take the easy money when it's there.
Stephen, of course, Jim Harbaugh's had an exceptional run at Michigan. He's done a great job there. He has proven to be a great coach, not just at Michigan. He has taken 3 teams to NFC championship games. He's gone to a Super Bowl, come within 1 play of a Super Bowl championship, did a remarkable job turning around the Stanford program. So there's no question. However, at Michigan, he's had issues in the postseason. Nick Saban, on the other hand, I don't know that it's almost impossible to overstate what he has done for his entire career, but in the postseason, it has taken basically an NFL team to beat him. It has taken Trevor Lawrence and an all-time great Clemson team. It has taken that Ohio State team that if you look at their roster on both sides of the ball and just NFL greats all over the place, it has taken those kind of the Georgia historic defense from a couple of years ago. It has taken a great all-time team to beat any Nick Saban team in postseason play. I don't know if that Michigan is there. What are your thoughts about what Nick Saban has done in the postseason and just his ability to prepare a team in 4 weeks for this type of matchup?
It's remarkable because Coach Saban gets everybody on the same mindset. And not just Coach Saban, you also got to give Alabama strength staff a huge kudos, because you got to look at it, Mark. For about 2 weeks, it's nothing but the strength staff on campus, right? Because Coach Saban's out recruiting, the assistant coaches are out there recruiting. So it's the strength staff getting these players mentally focused, getting these guys physically strong with the reps there, whether it's different body parts you're working on, different speed parts you're working on, the right diet you're working on. So it's the strength staff and the nutrition staff for 2 weeks prior to that bowl prep getting really sort of ramped up there. That group of people have their eyes and hands on these players, making sure that they're doing exactly what they need to do to stay ahead of the curve there. So you got to give those guys now the credit. But in terms of just the X's and O's, the motivation, keeping the balance of it all, Coach Saban has done a phenomenal job. Once you reach the playoffs, getting the best out of your guys and having them with the physical edge and with the mental edge. And Mark, you're correct. It's taken an opposing team to have something special in order to beat Coach Saban, whether it's a special generational quarterback, a Trevor Lawrence, a Deshaun Watson for Clemson, whether it's a special generational defense when you talk Georgia in that 2022 championship game off the 2021, season, or whether it's just, a marquee culture that's created. We can look at the Ohio State of the world when it came 2014, with Urban Meyer. That's what's taken to beat Coach Saban. You got to be special in an area. And Michigan, it doesn't have special at the quarterback position, J.J. McCarthy. McCarthy's good, but he would kind of have to play the game of his life to sort of have that work in his favor. Blake Corum is an unbelievable running back for Michigan, but Bama would have to be completely undisciplined and its run gaps for that to kind of pop off there. Defensively, Michigan's got guys, and they got guys that will play in the NFL, but, are the guys from Michigan good enough for 4 quarters defensively to really just have Milroe at his worst day and this Alabama offense at its worst day, remains to be seen. But that's going to be the thing with Michigan. Can they pull out something special in Pasadena under Jim Harbaugh, who has been unbelievable at creating a culture wherever he's been? He's created a culture of toughness, of hard hat, of get after you. And can he do it special enough here in this game against Alabama to pull this one out?
So, Stephen, of course, while Nick Saban and his staff has prepared this team for the last month for the biggest game of their lives, or at least in the last 2 years, they have had to put together a recruiting run here for the 2024 class. So it's been another great haul by the Alabama Crimson Tide, I believe rated number 2, according to 247 Sports and the other services. Just your thoughts about some of the guys that stand out to you.
Love the character of this group of kids. I mean, you signed 23 guys in this class. Several of them were on campus early to help with bowl prep. It may not wow you, the star rating, but the toughness of this group of men that Alabama's brought in, it is something to see. You got a 5-star quarterback in Julian Sand from Carlsbad High School in California. This young man gets it. I mean, the spin, the way the ball spins off his hand, it's something nice to see. And he's coming to bowl prep, impressing the coaching staff, impressing the quarterback room. He's got receivers like, whoa, this is the guy that's going to be here for the next 4. Whoa, like Julian Sand is something. What I want to see more from him, though, is when he escapes the pocket, does he have the wheels of a Bryce Young, of a Jalen Milroe? Because the creativity with the arm talent's there. Does he have the wheels to escape when things get bad there in that pocket? That's what I want to see more there from Julian Sand, but there's a lot to like there. The one that shocked me the most, Mark, when you flipped Kevin Riley from Miami to Alabama. This young man from Tuscaloosa County High School, right just across the bridge here in Northport from Tuscaloosa. When you watch this kid, Mark, Kenyon Drake speed. The dude can fly. He can pop out of the backfield. He can pop out in the perimeter. He can break. There's no use arm tackling this guy. He's got strength as well, can catch the ball out the backfield. You can put him as a kickoff returner. You can put him as a punt returner. This guy's got next level type of speed. And to be able to flip him from Miami to keep him at home in Tuscaloosa, this is a big deal. The question will be is how early can he get on the field, because he's battling a lot there in that running back room. You talk about Jam Miller coming back, Justice Haynes coming back, Richard Young coming back. It's going to be fun to see how does he fit here, in this room. But I really like Kevin Riley. Another guy, Justin Okunrokwo, linebacker from Germany. If he was playing in the States, he would be a 5-star. But because he's overseas, he's a 3-star guy. He's already got the height and the size to be an inside linebacker right now at 6'3", 215 pounds. Now, Coach Saban and his staff will get him around 225, 230, but the ability to shoot the gaps, the lateral quickness, the downhill thumping ability, I mean, he's got it. He runs a verified 4.37 to 4.40. The kid can fly. I really like Okunrokwo. And then from a defensive back perspective, Saban Brown, when I watch his tape, that is Patrick Surtain type tape. Mirroring the receiver, playing the ball, staying in phase, just perfect technique, whether he's in man coverage, press man, off man, zone, bodying up. He can do it all. Really elite footwork. Really like what Saban Brown brings.
Stephen, I was on Twitter the other day, and all of a sudden I hear this recreation of the kick six, courtesy Stephen M. Smith. It was on the Paul Feinbaum show. It was remarkable. Stephen, that was a thing of beauty. I enjoyed it. I played it a few different times. Where can people find that?
They can actually find that on Twitter there. I think I linked that to my profile, which is at Coaching M. Smith. If they can't find that on Twitter, they can definitely go back and watch the Paul Feinbaum show from December 15th, because I think he played that quite a few times on the show this December 15th. So I've actually been working on this whole Eli Gold impersonation for quite the time there. So I know Eli had a phenomenal bounce back from beating cancer here. But if there was ever a moment where he chooses to walk away from Crimson Tide Sports Network, from being the voice of Alabama football, I'm only a phone call away, Mr. Gold. I'm only a phone call away to fill in that role there.
Stephen M. Smith, the one and only. In my own words, that's the show, folks. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right here on YouTube at 6:30 Central. Touchdown Alabama, of course. Stephen, it's always a good time. Great to see you. Glad that you've enjoyed the holidays, and enjoy, of course, another Rose Bowl game, college football playoff, 2 Titans, Bama and Michigan. Should be a great one. We will talk to you soon, sir.
Absolutely, Mark. I appreciate it. You take care.